So here I have two applications, provider and client, and I use one of them. I use provider to implement services that then will be consumed, used by the client service, by the client's application. And on the provider side, we have, okay, yeah, so there is another issue with the with Zoom. So on the provider side, we have web services that live here, and I implemented two of them. One very simple, just to show you the basic concepts, and it has 4 parameters. Some of them are input, some of them are output. This message is an output parameter, and some of them are both input and output. And what it means, what this feature controls is the way this parameter goes. So input parameter goes from client to provider, to service provider, and you can use it to pass some values to the web service, and the output goes backwards from server to your site, and you also can have both input and output. So all of these I have here, and then I just call the service from the client side. So the call looks very simple, and let me show you. So I have a form, simple form here, and this form implements everything we will be using. So on the client side, I have WS reference to the service, and using this reference, I create a proxy. Then I specify the namespace and so on, and I call the service, and this is what it looks like. So again, I'm going very quickly, okay. Okay. So this is not. Okay, this is this looks like a wrong application. Sorry about that. This is why video is better. Yeah, I just opened the wrong application. It's okay. So I'm just calling this service, and it returns me some string. Very easy, very primitive one. I also implemented more realistic service here on the provider side, and it returns the list of sales documents. And to return such complex data structure, I need some way of defining the structure. And the way it's done in Once Enterprise is, of course, XDTO packages. So this is where I describe what kind of data will be exchanged between the client side and the provider side. The only interesting detail here is this this parameter. So sales doc has a tabular section, sales products, and this is the list. So I refer to a single sales doc, and then I tell it that it's a list by setting this minimum number and maximum number to 0 and -1 correspondingly. And 0 means that the list can be empty, and -1 means that there is no upper boundary to the number of elements in the list. So this is probably the only more or less tricky part here. I'm sorry. Okay, and the rest is easy. And let me show you how I fill out this list with a sales document. Because I do it manually like this. So I use XDTO factory, and the factory is just an object that has full access to all XDTO packages I have inside of my application, and I can ask this factory to produce any kinds of objects defined inside the XDTO. So first I ask it to give me a type of sales documents, and then I create the object of this type. So this is what these two lines do. And then I just cycle through my sales documents and fill out the XDTO fields with the values of sales documents fields. So very easy, very simple. Then I just return it to the caller. On the caller side, it also looks very simple. So I have another WS reference here. Yeah, and I have another WS reference here. And this is where the code is implemented. So leaves a common form integration test. So I create the web service proxy, and then, yeah, this one. I create web service proxy, and then I export sales docs, which I don't understand why it doesn't work. Just give me a second. Yeah, so I call the web service method, which is called export sales docs, and this is where I receive my result. So if I put a breakpoint here and run this piece of code like this, now I will have my sales document inside of this object. And well, it's just XDTO object. So here we have sales docs list. Each element of the list is its own XDTO object. So I can open it, and inside will be a single sales document. Inside of this document is the list of products and so on. So it's a tree-like structure that is quite complex on the one hand, but on the other hand, you already can see how you can read it and then do whatever you want with it. So these were SOAP services. REST services looks a little bit differently, and we work with them differently. So let's look at this. On the provider side, I have HTTP services. I have REST services in another part of the metadata tree, which is here, HTTP services. So I have sales doc service, and it has a root URI, a root URL, meaning that this name will be used after the name of the application in the address address string of the browser, or not the browser, but for wherever you call this service from. And then it has URI URL templates, which basically extend this root URL and here I have this endpoint called list, and this endpoint has the only method get that I use to request the documents list from the provider. And the difference here is that the methods are limited. The methods are predefined, and we cannot add anything new here. So all methods are predefined in HTTP standard protocol. So the same protocol we use every day to work with the internet. It describes methods that can be used in HTTP requests, and these methods we're using. So unlike SOAP, where we can come up with our own endpoint and then come up with any number of methods with any names, here we have more standard way, and it makes it more clear for everybody when they work with your services. So they can guess when they look at the endpoints, they can guess what methods they should call to get the results that they need. And this is why it's recommended to use HTTP services for any public interfaces, for any interfaces that you publish for outside world, for anybody to see. Okay, and the implementation is also quite different. So let's see what it looks like. This is the handler, the procedure that will be called when this method is called. And here I implemented it differently, and this is what's going on here. So I create an HTTP service response. This is the object I will be returning the result in, and then I call my own procedure and convert sales document to JSON. So it's a different format, but it's also a text format. So I can use it to transfer data over the internet, over the HTTP protocol. And here I use XDTO serializer. So instead of writing JSON manually, which I also can do, I decided to use XDTO serializer, which is much more compact and looks more clean and looks a little bit like Miracle. So XDTO serializer basically knows how to convert one's enterprise objects into any text format, not any text format, but some text formats, JSON, XML, and stuff like that. And this is exactly what's going on here. So I create a XDTO serializer in the first string, then I start JSON writer, and then I read all my documents and go and start cycling through them. These documents I read to the memory, and then I use serializer to write each specific sales document into JSON writer, just in one simple string, which is obviously much easier than read it on field-to-field basis. Okay, and then I just return this JSON, and it will go to the client side, and client should be able to run it, but for some reason it does not. Oh no, it does. So this is what it looks like on the client side. Oh no. Okay. Something broke while I was asleep. So, okay, anyway, you got the idea, and you probably already know how it works. So now let's get to more rare, more new topic, which is authorization and authentication. So, okay, let me stop my share. So, Okay, I will try to find slides. So let me start another share this time just for my desktop. Okay, so authorization and authentication. What does it mean? It means that when you work with your own service, you can decide what rules of the game are. And for example, you can make a service public and without any restrictions. But when you work with somebody else's services, for example, Google or Microsoft, of course, you cannot just go and start using it. You need to prove. You need to get an access. This is what this topic is about. So authorization and authentication. Important difference that is oftentimes misunderstood because it's a long English words that look kind of the same, and they start with the same four letters, but they mean very different things. And the way I like to think about it is that authorization, it's like a door key, is a permission to enter something and to give some access to something. And if you get somebody's door key, then you can enter the room without being the owner of this room, right? You just open the door and you're in. And this is how authorization works. So by giving you the key, the owner authorized you to enter the room and to get this level of access. This is what authorization is about. And authentication is means different thing. It's like a passport. It confirms that you are who you claim you are. And when somebody authenticates you, they basically compare your document with the records about the document that you should have. And if records fit, then probably you're the person who you say you are, and they give you the identity. They identify you. So authentication is basically the same as identification. Okay, and there are different ways of doing authorization, and we will start with authorization because I found that this is a very complex topic, and I had a very hard time trying to find any information about this topic over the internet, and I couldn't find any. If you know about any good manuals about authorization using OAuth protocol with one's enterprise, please share it with me because I couldn't find anything meaningful. And it turns out to be quite complex topic. There are different ways of authorization which we use. For example, when I want my application to have access to some resource that is stored elsewhere. For example, I'm building an application that I want to connect to my Gmail account. So I could read my email from my application. To make it happen, I need to ask Gmail a permission to access my account. Gmail needs to check somehow who am I, and if I have this level of access or not. It needs to ask the permission from the resource owner, from the owner of this account, and somehow get this permission, and then it can provide you with access. And the problem here is that during all these interactions, there shouldn't be any place where I pass my name and my login and password through the HTTP protocol, because obviously I can just store my password, my Gmail password inside of my my application, the application that I'm implementing, and then just pass this password to Gmail, and this way I will get all the access I need. But the problem here is the fact that I store the password in open form, in its original form, which is not how it's supposed to be done ever. You shouldn't be storing your passwords or anybody else's passwords in your database, and this is not how it should work. So the challenge is to give the access, but without exchanging the password in the open form. And there were the previous iteration of attempts to implement this kind of functionality was called SAML. It was another protocol. It's still in use in many places. So it's one way of doing that, but SAML doesn't work with, for example, mobile devices and other like Internet of Things, like your smart fridges and smart toilets and stuff like that. So it was designed when there weren't smartphones, for example. So it doesn't take it into account, and this is why it has to be replaced with something. This something is called OAuth, so Open Authorization. And again, OAuth uses four first letters, and you can understand both ways, authorization and authentication. And actually, there is part of OAuth that does authentication, but we will get to it later. Let's first start with authorization. So how it works, how you can get access to your Gmail account without storing your password in your application. So this is the diagram, and the idea is that my application sends some form of request to Gmail to the right, the blue box to the right, and Gmail gets this request, but then it starts talking to end user, not to my application, but to end user. So it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell my application anything. Instead, it opens the link to the web page that is dynamically generated and contains some JavaScript inside of it. And this page, this is basically a login form that is shown to the user, not to the application, but to the user. And the user manually enters his login and his password, clicks login, Gmail verifies the password, and then after the password is verified, Gmail sends authorization code to my application. So this first interaction between my application and Gmail goes over the open channel, over the HTTP from browser to browser, and it all can be intercepted and can be looked at. But from this moment, when Gmail sends me the authorization code, the interaction goes through the back channel, which means that one server talks to another server. There is no talks over easily interceptable channels. One backend talks to another backend. So Gmail sends me this code directly to my server through back channel. And this code is has very short lifetime, 30 seconds. And during those 30 seconds, I need to exchange, my application needs to exchange this code for the access token. And so I sent my authorization code, Gmail verifies it and returns me the access token instead. And this access token I can start using as a key to my data. So I can go to different endpoints of Gmail API and start asking Gmail to give me my emails, or delete them, or do whatever I want, because now I have an access. Now I have access to this data. And during those requests, I use this access token as a key. So each time I send a request to those data APIs, I add the access token, and Gmail compares it to its records and gives me permission to work with my data. And this access token lives longer than the authorization code. It depends on the implementation. There are many different systems that do it differently. Gmail authorization, Gmail access token expires in 1 hour. So after 1 hour is over, you need another access token, and you do it using another token that is called refresh token. So actually you get 2 tokens. You exchange your authorization code for 2 tokens, the access token and the refresh token. The access token you use to get access to data, and the refresh token you use to get different access token after this one is expired. Okay, and now let's try to look at the implementation. So we leave the presentation mode here. And so implementation starts here. Right now, I'm inside the Google Cloud Platform console. So whenever I want any access to my data inside of Google domains, any Google domains, YouTube, Gmail, anything, calendar, I always need to start here. So I need the Google Cloud Platform account, and this is where I set up my access to my resources. So here I am. I created a separate account for this email address, and now I register my application. So I tell Google what applications I will be using to access my data, and this is the place where I just registered them. So this is let's try it this way. Yeah, so this is the list of my applications, and of course there might be many of them, but for now I have the only one. I called it web client, and these are the settings of this specific application. So it has name, it has the URI among authorized JavaScript origins, which means that when this domain sends authorization request, the first one, to the to Google, Google knows that this domain has right to run JavaScript code, because this first request contains basically a redirect link to a web page with some JavaScript code inside. So Google requires permission, requires you to register all sources of such redirections, and this is where you tell it that this is my application. It's okay to trust it. And these two things are the most important things in this whole picture. So whenever you register your application, Google creates these two keys for you. So it's client ID, and it's a unique identifier of this specific application, and it's client secret. It's another identifier of the same application. They are somehow connected, but they just different, just in case. So you have two keys. And you also need to set up the redirect URIs, and this is rather difficult concept. So let me show you another diagram that explains the same authentication flow as the previous one, but just in different terms. So here, user clicks something, does some manual action, and which requests, for example, my emails from Google. So it clicks this button, and here what my application does. So this is my application. It sends the authorization code request in the form of a link to the Gmail in our case, and this request, this request number 2, contains so-called redirect URI, which is basically my own HTTP service that Google needs to use to return the authorization code to me. So this arrow number 5 is where Google talks to my server that I published for Google, and here I pass the redirect URI to Google. So this is kind of a tricky concept, and it took me some time to wrap my head around it, but this is how it works. And this authorization code doesn't go just anywhere. Just to any redirect URI I come up with. It knows the list of redirect URIs that are allowed by me, by the owner of this account, and this is where I specify them. So this is the URI of my own HTTP service that I'm using to get the authentication code from Google. So I registered it with Google. And, so these are the settings on the Google Cloud Platform side, and now let's look at the implementation in one's enterprise. So we don't need provider anymore, because now our provider is not our application but Google. So we will be using only the client application. This is what it looks like. So when I click, so this is my form. When I click get the authorization token, I'm calling this code. I'm calling this procedure, and this is the link that I was talking about. So basically, what I'm doing here is I just open this link, and there is another tricky part. So let's get back to the diagram. When I send this request in the form of a link to Google, it actually opens the login authorization prompt in different application. So it's not like I open this link in my own Once Enterprise application. No, it shouldn't be like that, and it cannot be implemented like that. The idea is that you open just outside browser for this purpose, or the window of this outside browser, and there user enters his login and password, and it talks directly to Gmail using this outside browser without without staying inside of your application. And if you try to open this link, sorry, this one. Yeah, if you try to open this link inside the ONCE Enterprise application, you will see that it works, for example, for a thin client, but it doesn't work for a web client, which was a mystery for us for some time, and we spent quite a lot of time discussing it with the ONCE Enterprise developers. And it turns out that so the way you open links inside ONCE Enterprise is, of course, the HTTP document field, right? And it works. The link can be open in thin client, but it cannot be open in web client. It just gives an error. And the reason for that is that browser has a stricter access policy, and it doesn't allow you to open other domain links inside of your domain application. This is just a security breach, security vulnerability that can be used, and browser doesn't allow that. Just for the security reasons. So you're supposed to open different browser, and their user will be able to enter his or her login and password. And this is exactly what I do here. So I just creating this link, and then I tell ONCE Enterprise to run whatever application is responsible for opening these kind of links. And of course, ONCE Enterprise just runs the default browser. And this is it. So basically, this part of implementation is over for me. And the link looks like this. So first of all, this is the endpoint of Google API that is responsible for authentication, for authorization, sorry. So this is where I go to. This is the door I knock at, asking for the access token. The response type means what kind of information I'm requesting, and now I'm of course requesting the authorization code, the short-lived one, the one that lives for 30 seconds, and this is my client ID. So I need to store my client ID somewhere, and I use constants for this purpose. So I have a constant here with client ID, and I just copied it from the right from here, just copy pasted it from here. So this is what I pass as my credentials to Google, and the redirect URI is my own HTTP service that I pass to Google, and I tell Google that it should use this link to return me my authorization, my access token. And this is how this HTTP service is implemented. So I have it right here. It's called auth, but there is no standard here. So of course, you can specify any link, so you can give any name to this HTTP service. And I gave it root URL authorization, and here I have auth code. So just another subdivision after the name of the service, and the method is get. So the what Google will do, it will call the get method, and this is what's inside of this get method. This is what I do inside. So let's just actually try and debug this piece of code, so you will see how it works, and we will be able to look inside. So to debug HTTP services, of course, as you probably know, you need to go here and to tell the platform to auto attach HTTP services when they when they are here, when somebody is connecting to the services. So I'm setting up the breakpoint here. And now let's look what it looks like. So I'm going, this is my first request. So this is the first click, this one. This is the first click. I'm doing it right now. And what just happened, sorry for the Russian, let me switch back to English. So what just happened is some link has opened on the Google side, and it's opened in the external browser. And here I can confirm that I'm the owner of these resources, and I'm allowing this application to access my Gmail or whatever we're talking about. And here, of course, I've done it many times, and I have my tokens, my credentials somewhere in cookies files. So Google just tells me that my application already has some access, but now it wants me to confirm that I agree with this access, and I say, yeah, I agree. And I agree. And Google just called my service, and here we are at the breakpoint. And let's see what we get here. And so this is the request that Google sent. And inside, inside of this request, somewhere. Yeah, and inside of this request, there are query options, and one of the options is called code. So this is my access code. This is my authorization code that I should exchange for the access key during the 30 seconds period that this code lives. And another interesting option is scope. So the concept of scope is also a very important one. So let me return here. We actually asked not for any permission, not for permission to do anything, but for permission to do specific things. And the amount of access that we are requesting is specified inside the scope parameter. And of course, each provider has their own sets of scopes and the names of those scopes, and it can be very different depending on the provider that you work with. For example, when I work with Gmail, the scope can be that I can, for example, read emails, but I cannot delete them. Or I can send emails, but cannot do anything else. So scope limits your access. So you don't get access to any action or any resource, get access to specific types of resources and specific actions. And so you need to refer to the provider documentation for the exact scopes that you can use here. But in this case, I just ask for permission to do everything, and this is my scope. And Google returned me this scope in his request. And now I guess there has been more than 30 seconds, so we shouldn't be able to work with this code because it's expired already, but let's just try and just see what happens. After I get this access code, this is authorization code. This is the request number 5 from this link. Then I sent another request. This time I use this authorization code. I use my client ID and my client secret to exchange the authorization code for the access token and refresh token. And this is where I put this request together. So again, I read my client ID, I read my client secret, and these are the query parameters. So this type, there is a parameter called grant type, which I set to authorization code. there is client ID, client secret, and there is the access code I just received from Google. So this one I didn't know before, but now I do know, so I can pass it to Google. And here again, I need to use the redirect URI, but this time it won't work the same way. So this time Google won't call my service. It will just respond to this request and return me back my my access code. So I don't need another service to process another request from Google. There won't be another request. It will just return the access token in the response to my request. So I'm sending this request over the, of course, SSL connection, and let's see. So set body from soon. Okay, and this is my response. So let's see what does it contain. Okay, so surprisingly, the status code Google returned is 200, which means that it accepted my my authorization code. So probably the lifetime of the authorization code in the case of Google more than 30 seconds. And now I'm reading the response, the body of the response that Google returned, and this is what's inside. Let's look at it. So this is what Google returned me, and here we have another JSON, and this JSON contains access token, this gibberish long meaningless string, and the refresh token that I can use to to get another access token as soon as this one is expired. And of course, there is a scope for the same one, and this is the amount of time my access token expires in. So it's in seconds, and it's 1 hour. So my access token is valid for 1 hour, and then I will need to refresh it. And yeah, from this point forward, everything is fine. I get my access token, and now I can start. Oh, I just save it to constants here, to another constants, to access token and expiration date and refresh token, and I just save to my constants. And from now on, I can start talking to Google data APIs to get, for example, my emails in this example. And this button, this link does this job, and this is how it's implemented. So this is my form. So show emails, this one. Okay, so now when I have access token, I can start using it in conversation with different APIs of Google. And this one, for example, is Gmail API that allows me to access my email from my application. And it's a very simple one. And the only tricky part here is this. So when I send an HTTP request, I have to specify the access token in this parameter. And when Google receives this request, it will compare my token with its records, and will decide whether I have access to this or not. And yeah, so I just go and read my emails. I implemented reading my emails subjects, and these are what's in this temporary mailbox. It's just subjects of emails in my inbox. So this part is obviously simple. The hard part is to get the access token. Okay, we have another short topic about OpenID Connect, but I would like to stop here and to ask if you guys have any questions, because this I know that this is a new topic for at least for some of you, and probably you would like to know more. So please hit me with your questions right now if you have any.
Okay. If you have some questions, you can just say it or type it in our chat. But now, Konstantin, we still have a question.
Yep.
Yeah, about cryptography.
Yes, sorry. So first of all, we have a question from George about the link to this material. And the answer is this. So first of all, I will do it right now because I have it somewhere in hand. So I will give you a bunch of links. Sorry, a bunch of links. As soon as I find them. Yeah, so here they are. So this is a bunch of links, and first of all, there are DT files that I published for you, and this is a client DT and a provider DT. So you can download them, and you can look inside of them and check out how it works if you want. There are API links, and these are APIs that I published, and you can try how they work. For example, this is WSDL API. Yeah. And this is the HTTP the REST API. This is a link to auth documentation that I used, so please feel free to use it. Okay, and more questions about auth. So George, about the cryptography. The answer is very short. I need to look into it, so I won't be able to answer you right away because you ask about specific algorithms, and I'm not sure if they are implemented or not. I know that there are cryptography in one's enterprise platform, and it's implemented to some extent, but I don't know to what extent. Okay, so I never heard of this algorithm, and I don't know if it's implemented or not. So let me get back to you after the summit, and I will give you more information, okay? Okay, so more questions about auth or about the topic in general. Okay, I just leave you guys to it, and maybe you will have your questions later, because I know that it's a confusing topic. At least it was confusing for me, and we spent quite a lot of time trying to figure it out. And the last part I wanted to talk to you about. Sorry, the last part is the authentication. Okay, so authentication is basically a way of checking if you are who you claim you are. So it's some kind of a document, a credential that you give some authority, and this is authority confirms that this is you. This is not somebody else. And we can use it for different purposes, and one of them, the most obvious one, is a single sign-on. So when you have a single account within some identity provider like Google or Facebook or any other, many companies and now can act as identity providers. And so you have the account there, and this identity provider can verify that you are you, and send this verification to third parties, to some other sites. So you don't need to have many accounts in many different places. You have you have a single account, and use it as your universal password to many other services. So this is what's called single sign-on. And the second use case is persistent sign-in. It's when you signed to your account, and then the day is over and you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and you still sign to your account, although your computer even was turned off. So your sign-in somehow survived the periods when you didn't work, and it works for some time. I don't know, days, even weeks, even maybe a month. It depends on the service that you use. So your sign-in stays open for some time, and then it expires, and service requests you to log in once again. And these things are implemented using the protocol called OpenID Connect. And it's a little bit confusing because there is another protocol called OpenID without Connect, just OpenID, and it's a very early version of the identity provider of implementation of identity provider functionality. And once enterprise supports OpenID without Connect bidirectionally, so once enterprise can be the provider of identity for OpenID protocol and can be the client of that accepts this ID from some other identity provider, whether it's another 1C enterprise application or somebody else's application. So once enterprise supports OpenID both ways, but when it comes to OpenID Connect, it's a different protocol. It looks very differently. It does the same. And this is why it's called this almost the same, but it's a very different one. And it's basically just an extension of OAuth 2.0 that allows you not only to authorize somebody, to give somebody access to some resources, but also to identify somebody, right? So you can use it to single sign-on and stuff like that. And this one, the OpenID Connect, which is the short version of this is OIDC. The OIDC is supported partially by once enterprise, and so once enterprise can accept credentials, OIDC credentials from identity providers, but cannot cannot be an identity provider itself. So only one way. For example, we can use my Google account to connect to my application, and it will work, but we can do it other way around. We can ask Google to use some account that's stored somewhere in one's enterprise application. Okay, and first let me show you how this works. Okay, so this is, yeah, let me show you how it works. So my integration client. Okay. I don't remember whether it's called client or just. Yeah. Okay. So did you notice what just happened? So I tried to connect to one of my applications, to my client application. So I typed this link, integration client, and what happened is I was redirected to all of a sudden to Google login page, right? So let me show it to you one more time. Okay, so I'm trying to enter the once enterprise, and all of a sudden I'm at the Google inside the Google domain, and Google asks me to select an account to log in under. So I'm selecting an account, and now the Once Enterprise application has been run, and I get inside of the Once Enterprise application. So I somehow get access to Once Enterprise through my Google account. And this magic is implemented like that. Let me show. So this is the application that works this way, and these are its users. These are its users, administration users. Okay, and this is the user I just logged in under. So important thing, this the name of the user has to be the same as the name of the user inside the identity provider database. In this case, inside Gmail. So I have to use my Gmail if I want as my name inside Once Enterprise if I want Gmail to identify me and to let me in the Once Enterprise application. So this is the first part, the same name, and this is the second part. So the only thing I need to do is to click this OpenID Connect authentication flag. So I allow this user to log into my application using OpenID Connect to IDC, and this is it from the Once Enterprise side. But there is another piece of work that needs to be done, and it lives in a VRD file. VRD file, as you probably know, is what Once Enterprise creates whenever you publish your info base to the web server. It creates this VRD file, and I need to add something like that to this VRD file. And the problem is that this piece of text is different for different identity providers, and it's very hard to read and very hard to understand. And again, I use the client ID, so I need to be registered. And this is the same client ID I use for OAuth, of course, because I have the single account in my Google Cloud. The best way of thinking about this text is that it does something, and you just need to copy paste it from somewhere. And we have the article, the ICS article about this topic, and it contains the examples of those codes, of those texts for Google, for Microsoft, and for somebody else. I don't remember. But the problem is that this article is in Russian, and we're thinking about translating it, but we're not sure when. So if you need this functionality, if you have some deadlines, please let us know, and we will try to speed up this process. And there is also a data processor written in Once Enterprise that allows you to set up your VRD file for specific identity provider. But again, this data processor is in Russian. So far, it isn't translated to English yet. So please let us know if you are interested, and we will think what we can do about it. And yeah, this is it. So when it comes to OIDC, this is it. So you just add this text that somehow communicates to Google and to Once Enterprise that Google is now can authorize my clients. And by the way, this link is a standard Once Enterprise link, so it points at my domain, at my server, my application, and then this is a standard name auth form HTML. So it should be like this, and you need to register this link as a redirect URI in your Google Cloud Console. So it's registered right here, and if it wasn't, this wouldn't work. Okay, so Google needs to know all redirect URIs that you will be using So don't forget about that. And yeah, so this is it. That's our OAuth and our OpenID Connect. And I don't know, only if you have any questions. The link doesn't work. Yeah, okay, sorry, my mistake. Yeah, I see. Yeah, those links should work. Yeah, sales, WSD. Let me check. Okay. Yeah, one more piece of information. Very actually interesting and tricky one. So here is a problem. When I start, as long as this application, this client provider has no users, it was opened. It didn't require any credentials to work with it, right? So Google could during this OAuth exchange between my application and Google could call my HTTP service without authorization, right? So it was open to anybody, and Google had no problems calling it. But as soon as I started adding users here, situation changed. So now Google all of a sudden cannot access my application anymore because there are users inside, and Google needs to provide a valid login and password to enter my system. So how do we resolve this issue? And the best solution is to tell Google what username and password to use, which is not a best practice, of course, because you give somebody your password, and this somebody will store it in open form, and it can be hacked, and your password can be leaked to unknown number of hackers, and so it's a big vulnerability. You shouldn't do that. So instead, what we do is we publish the same application, this client application, twice. So we have two publications of this app. One of them, this one that I just showed you, it's a normal publication, so it allows you to, anybody to open the web client to connect to this application. It allows users to authorize through Google and stuff like that. It publishes web services and so on and so on. So this is the normal publication. And we do the second one, which actually publishes only one HTTP service and nothing else. And it contains the username and the password right inside of the VRD file. And so you have you store your password in open form, but this is just a file that lives locally on your server. It's not in somebody else's hands, right? It's in your hand. It's just a file. It's very hard to find. It's very hard to parse it and looking for passwords. So it's almost impossible to find this password. And Google talks to my application through this publication that contains the username and password inside of the publication. And therefore, Google doesn't need to provide me with the valid credentials. Okay, so now I think I covered everything I wanted. Okay, so any questions, guys?
While we are waiting for the questions, I want to remind you that all recordings from all Techno tracks will be published in YouTube and sent in follow-up messages. And of course, we will attach all necessary links for this video and this recording.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yes, sure, of course. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dennis. I'm from a big group, Czech Republic. So my question is about this redirect links, which we have to give to the OpenID provider. So if there is, for example, infinite number of users in our system, so somebody came to us and we provide him with some registration form. So do we have to add a new redirect link for every person who came to us? And so if is this so, how to provider know, how the Google will know to which URI send this information, or is it only one for the one service?
Yes. So yes, the last option. So the only redirect URI you will be using is this one that I'm showing right now. It doesn't contain any information about user. It just points at my application published anywhere on the web server. So there is no user-specific information. And Google will always, what Google does is basically creates for each user an OpenID Connect token, the authentication token, basically digital password, and then just sends it to my to this link, and once enterprise decipher this token and sees what user is this, what kind of access it has, this kind of stuff. So you have the only redirect URI for each identity provider. But if you have several identity providers, then of course you will have different. You will need to register.
Well, that's obvious. So they basically gave us the pair user, some user ID, and this new token that they generated for this connection.
Yes. So what identity provider does, it put together the token that has very specific format, and there is even it's called no, sorry, I forgot how it's called. So it's also JSON, but it's ciphered, it's encrypted inside, and this JSON contains the information about the username and some other stuff. So basically it has the username and the information that yes, I know this user, this is his name is this, and now you decide what kind of access you can allow this user to have. And once enterprise receives this token decrypted and sees that yeah, this user is registered, Google says me that this user is registered there, and I see that it's registered in my users list, and the name is the same, and this is the roles that this user belongs to. So this is the kind of access that it gets.
Okay, I get that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, it was a good question. Any other questions, please?